Hello everyone and welcome to Call Sign Charlie Models. Andre here, and we have another huge inbox review today. And today we are doing the Trumpeter 132nd A-18F Super Hornet right here. Gorgeous kit. Now I have built a couple of the Trumpeter Hornets. I've built the E and the G. And the G is pretty much going to be the same as this kit, only a few different differences with the lumps and bumps and a couple of the armament pieces as well, and also the cockpit. So I'm going to get the camera turned around and we're going to start looking at the box and then the instructions and everything. So give me 1 second and I'll be right back. Alright, we're back, and as you can see, this box is absolutely massive. I have the camera as high up on my camera mount as it will go, and it is zoomed out all the way, and the box doesn't even come close to fitting. So going off by the top box art, we have some absolutely gorgeous box art with VFA2, the bounty hunters right here. We have the colorful version, and we also have the low-vis version right here. So this is the commanding officer's bird, and then we have another line bird right here. So you can tell by the 100 and the 112 on which one's the commanding officers and which one is also a line bird. So going on the actual model, we have a length of 570.5 millimeters, which is approximately 22 3/4 inches, and then a wingspan of 425 millimeters, which is approximately 16 3/4 inches as well, and a total parts count of 761 pieces. So a lot of parts included in this kit. And then we go off to the side. Again, it's going to be very close up. We have VFA2, the bounty hunters from Abraham Lincoln. Doesn't give a year that this scheme is from, but we have that one right there. And then on the opposite side, we have two more with the VFA 103, the Jolly Rogers from the Dwight D. Eisenhower right here. Again, a very nice scheme. And then we have VFA 102, the Diamondbacks from the USS Kitty Hawk right here, known by the sailors as the Shitty Kitty. And then we also have all of our armament and everything that's going to be included in the kit as well on that side. So we pulled the top box off, and this thing is absolutely jammed packed with all the plastic. I think the reason why these parts are out of the bag is I had to cannibalize something possibly. Yep, I had to cannibalize one part for one of my other builds. So I'm going to get everything pulled out and set off to the side, and then we'll start going through the instructions, the decals, and all the plastic included in this kit. So give me 1 second and I'll be right back. Alright, so starting off with the instructions, this is item number or kit number 32 or 03205. Alright, let me get the paint call outs set aside. We'll go through those here in a second. But we have the standard Trumpeter instruction booklet, black and white, and the landscape format, and also the legend of symbols that we're going to be using. Then we open it up, and again we have our legend or parts callouts. All the parts are not numbered, or they are numbered but they are not visible or legible on those, so you can see all the different part sprues on that. And then we open it up, and we're starting off with the cockpit, getting our cockpit tub done right there, and also our ejection seats going on and all together. And then we're doing our nose landing gear well right there, along with our nose landing gear. After that's done, we're going to get our nose landing gear well attached into our forward fuselage section, along with the radar that we have here to go in. Then after that, we're working on our engines. We do have full-length engines and intakes on this kit, and we also have our aft landing gear going in. One downside to this is that it is already in the on-deck position, so you cannot put it in flight like it's landing or anything like that without some major modification to the kit right there. So we got that. We do have rubber wheels for this kit with our wheel hubs as well. After that, we're working on our aft landing gear or our main landing gear section, adding in some framing to that on both sides. And then we're working on our intakes and our engines, getting those all into our lower fuselage. Alright, then up next we are working on our wings. We're getting our wing halves together along with our fold mechanism and our flaps right there. And just going on, we do have the option of having the flaps and slats in the up or down position on this kit. And then we're working on our outer wings right here. Same thing, wing halves and also the wing fold mechanism. And we also have our sidewinders going on here as well. And the same thing with our flaps and slats on this one. And then we're just repeating for the other side right here. And then we have, like I said, we have the option of having the wings extended or folded right there. So that's how you're going to do that. And then after that's all done, we are getting our cockpit in, and then our upper fuselage, and then this little back piece for our cockpit section. And after that, we're working on our vertical stabilizers with our rudder right there. And then we are going back to our nose section, adding in the nose cone and also the gun mount right here. And then you also have the option of having the nose cone open so you can show off that radar if you please. Alright, so after that's all done, we are getting all the fuselage sections put together right here. From what I remember, there wasn't much of an issue with this. Even though I used the aftermarket intakes, I did not have an issue with getting the fuselage halves together. The where the seam lines all match up is absolutely perfect. Alright, then moving on, we're going to get in our vertical stabilizers and our exhaust cones and our elevators right here. And that's it for that step. And then we are adding in our landing gear doors, our tail hook, and then a couple of antennas going on and pitot tubes as well. And then we're adding in more landing gear doors right through here. And then we have the option of having the boarding ladder in the up or down position. And then also the same thing with our refueling probe in the extended or stowed position right there. Alright, then moving on, we have our canopy. We do have a little bit of canopy railing to go in there. A little bit of detail, not much. But that's all going on right there. We do have the option of having it in the open or closed position. And then we're adding in all of our pylons and our AMRAMs and all of that. And then we have a ton of ordnance to go onto this kit if you choose. So we have our fuel tanks right here. It does say that there's a decal that goes around this. It doesn't say for option A right here. And then you have your M120s, the A and B. You have your AGM 154 JSOW. You have your AGM 84 Harpoon missile, your AGM 84H Harpoon, and then E, the Slammer. And then you have your lightning pod right here, the AQ-25. Then we have the AMD 141, which is, I believe, a decoy. And then we have our LGTR, which is a training missile right there. And then we're moving on to our ground ordnance with our GBU-22, GBU-12, our triple ejector rack, and our multiple ejector rack right there. And then we have our loadout call-out sheet right here. So if you follow this, you'll have a nice, accurate loadout for this. Alright, so moving on to our color call-outs. Very nice, large sheet right here. On the first one, we have VFA 2 Bounty Hunters from the USS Abraham Lincoln. Nice colorful scheme right here with the stars, or the red, white, and blue going down the fuselage and then also on the tail fin right here. And then we also have the VFA 103 Jolly Rogers from the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. Again, nice colorful scheme with the famous Jolly Rogers right there. And then we flip it over to the other side. We have our weapons, color callouts, and decal callouts right there. And then we have the VFA 102 Diamondbacks from the USS Kitty Hawk. A very nice red and diamond color scheme right there with the rattlesnake on the back end right there. So again, or the diamondback snake, not the rattlesnake, the diamondback snake right there. So again, a very nice color scheme with that. I do have some aftermarket decals for this, for the Jolly Rogers. I'm going to do a low vis line bird, I think, for that one. Going on to the decals, getting these cut out real quick. Alright, our first decal sheet, as you can see, some very nice artwork on there. The carrier film looks okay. and all the decals and everything, color registry, the lettering on this warning seems a little bit blurry, in my opinion. But everything else on here does look pretty nice on that. We also have some decals for the landing gear right here, and then some decals for our cockpit right here. And we do even have the option, it looks like, for one screen to have it powered down right here. I'm not sure on which ones are which. I know this one is for our the front panel where you enter in your waypoints and all your elevations and target information right there. So yeah, so that one looks pretty nice. And then we move on to our next one. Alright, so our next one is for the VFA 2 Bounty Hunters right here. We have some nice decals with that one. Right there. The national insignia, the stars and bars, they do seem way off color in my opinion. The blue just seems way too bright right there. So that's really the only issue that I am seeing with this decal, because everything else looks absolutely perfect. The decals are nice and thin on there, no real issues with that one, minus the national insignia miscoloration. Alright, so our next decal sheet is a very large decal sheet, and we have our diamonds for our Diamondback, and also the Diamondbacks right there, as you can see, in all the carrier emblems right there. Very nice on the decals. The carrier film, I can't really tell where it's... Okay, so you have very large carrier film to deal with. All of this right here is one solid decal. So you're going to have some real fun dealing with that carrier film right there. And then everything else on here really looks nice. The skull and crossbones for the Jolly Rogers. Some nice artwork on that. I'm not really seeing any real issues with this decal sheet, minus the very large carrier film for these decals right there. Then our last decal sheet is just our Ordnance stencils and such going on with all the striping and everything on there. Should go down pretty nicely. They feel nice and thin, not too thick. The problem is the lettering on these right here are not legible. They just look like blotted lines. And along with this one, they are... Okay, so now that I look closer, they are legible on those. So everything else, minus these decals, look very nice. Alright, so up next we have our first clear part, and this is our main canopy. We do have the main seam going down the back side of it. Again, it is nice and a little bit raised. It's not too thick, so it will be an easy sand down on that. So, but other than that, the plastic does look crystal clear. So that is going to be super nice, especially when you put a nice little polish on it. It's going to look really nice. Alright, and then we have our front canopy right here, again with the seam line going down the middle, and then we have a bunch of other navigation lights and our HUD right here. So all those look very nice, super clear, and no issues minus this one seam, but that is easy to take care of once you get it sanded down and polished out. Alright, and then we have a couple more sprues with some clear parts. I'm pretty sure these are for our Ordnance right here. Nice and clear, no issues. Then we have a couple small photo etch frets with our seat belts and a couple other parts for the, maybe this is for the fuselage, not sure. But we just have a repeat of our seat belts and all that on the other side. Alright, so moving on to our lower fuselage half. Very nice panel line and rivet detail again all the way through on this. Looking very nice. It's not super crazy with all the rivets. The rivets look like they're where they're supposed to be on here, so no issues with any of that. The landing gear wells again also look very nice. A little bit of cable detail in there, and you're also going to have all the framing that goes in there too to liven that up. So very nicely done on the aft landing gear well. really no need for aftermarket on that piece right there. Then we flip it over to the other side, not much detail. We have the supports for our intakes right there, and then the supports for our exhaust right here, and that's all we have for this part of the kit. Alright, so up next we have our rubber tires. Again, the tread is okay on them. There's no sidewall detail on them. Again, I am not a fan of rubber tires, so I will definitely be getting the aftermarket resin wheels for this kit. But for out of the box, you can get away with the tread and everything on this. We do have a nice little seam line going down the middle of this wheel and all the other wheels as well. And then again, we've been bamboozled by Trumpeter saying that they have metal landing gear. Unless this is plastic coated with the metal landing gear, this just looks like straight plastic landing gear. Let's do a quick test. Alright, so yes, the landing gear is all plastic. There is no metal core to it. So even though it says on the box metal landing gear, we don't have metal landing gear. These are plastic core right here. So a little bit of false advertisement from Trumpeter on this part. Alright, now moving on to our upper fuselage section, and you can see we have some absolutely gorgeous panel line and rivet detail on there. When you get this painted and panel line and washed and everything, this looks absolutely gorgeous when it's all done. We also have our ECS vents right here. Again, very nice. These are, you can get correction sets for these. These are a little bit off on shape, and there are correction sets out for those. But everything else on here, even the vent detail right there, it looks very nice. And then the underside of this, we have some nice support on here. You're going to have a piece that goes right under here that kind of blends into the nose section right here to help reduce any seam lines. If I remember correctly, I did have a little bit of a seam line right along the edge, but it was a very easy cleanup on that. So again, really nicely done on the upper fuselage half, because the only seam line that you're really going to have to worry about is back here on this piece right here. Alright, so up next in the box, we had another box that was just jammed packed with Ordnance and a few other small sprues right here. But starting off with this one, we have our GPUs right here. Again, very nicely detailed on this. The fins on the front end of this GPU do feel a little small for the sensor pod right here. And then the actual fins for the GPU actually are way too thick. They should be a lot thinner than that. So again, gonna either need to get aftermarket GPUs or file these down to get them back to the thickness that they need to be, which is about half of what it is. So we get two of these sprues right here. Then we get another double sprue of GPUs, but a different GPU right here. Again, on this one, the fins do have the nice knife edge of the leading edge, and then on the back end as well, a knife edge on the leading edge. So these GPUs actually do look very nice indeed. Alright, up next we have another double sprue of our Harpoon missiles. It looks like either our Harpoons or our Slam ER missiles, but these also, there's some nice rivet detail on there, hoping that the camera will pick that up. And then we also have our fins, again, very nice with the knife edge, leading edge, and trailing edge as well, kinda. But all the fins on this do look very nice. The rivet detail on here does look very nice as well. And we get, again, two of these sprues. Alright, then up next we get another double sprue of our Harpoon missiles right here. Again, very nicely done on the fins. Nice and a knife edge on the leading edge right there, and then we also have some nice panel line and rivet detail on this. Just it isn't half, so you are going to have to deal with that seam line going down the middle. So as you can see right there, another set of fins, again knife edge on the leading edge. Alright, so up next, you guessed it, we get another 2 of these sprues, and they are some more Ordnance. These are our SLAM ER missiles right here, as you can see, with the nose going on right there. And we're going to have a clear part that goes over that, and then our fins right there for, again, pretty nice on the panel line and rivet detail. These are obviously newer weapons designed by Trumpeter right here. Alright, and now we have another double sprue right here. This is our decoys right here, looking pretty nice. What they do is they launch these, and these will emit all the MCON and everything going on, and that will decoy all the radars and everything onto this one, and also the surface to air missiles onto this guy, while the other jets go and do their mission. So again, a nice piece of technology that we can use, and nice little asset to your model as well. Alright, so up next we have an old ECM pod right here, or not an old one, but these are primarily used on the A-10s right here. And then we have our training missile going on, then a few other parts like our lightning pod and everything else going on, our lantern pod as well, and then also another pylon right there. So again, pretty nice. I prefer the Edward lightning and lantern pods over the kit one, because they just, in my opinion, look a lot better, because as you can see right here, the sensor face right here is just a solid piece of plastic. If they would have put that kind of recessed and then put some glass work in there, that would have been perfect, kind of like what Academy did, but they just have a solid piece of plastic, so you have to paint that instead. And then we have our triple ejector racks and our multiple ejector racks right here. The sway braces do look very nice on that. And then we even have some wiring detail for the racks that we are going to be putting onto our triple and multiple ejector racks. Alright, so up next we have our joint standoff weapons right here, and we get 4 of these sprues right here. The detail on it does look very nice with the rivet and panel line detail. Our wings also nice, and the leading edges do look nice and rounded and knife edged where it needs to be, and everything else looks very good right there. So again, very nice. We get a total of 4 of these as well. Alright, up next, 2 sprues of our AIM-9s right here. Can't tell, these might be our AIM-9Xs or AIM-9Ls. I'm not sure which one, or it might be 2 different options right there, depending on the... Nope, those are our tail fins and our front fins right there. So I think these might be the AIM-9Xs, but I'm not 100% positive. Alright, up next we have our AIM-120s right here. We get 4 of these sprues. Right here you can tell the weapon detail on here, again, pretty nice for the rivet detail. Not much else to it on that. Alright, now we have our ejection seats. This is the last 2 sprues of the box inside the box right here. As you can see, the seat detail does look okay. Of course, there's resin options that are out there that are going to look a lot better, but this one does look okay, and you can go in and do some little modifications to the seat to add some texture to it and everything. And then we have our ejection pole handles right here, then the top side of the ejection seat and the back side of the ejection seat. Flip it over, not much to it. Everything's going to be covered up on this side anyways. Alright, so now we have our flap actuators right here. Again, we have the option of in the down or up position, as you can see right there. These do fit really well, and they do support the flaps really well when they are connected. So those are really nice on that. And then we have the patches for our landing gear section right here. Then some antenna that are nicely rounded or knife edged at the very front end. Then our refueling probe door right here, and then our landing gear doors, again looking very nice. And then these are our electronics bays doors right here with some nice panel line detail in there. As you can see, more on our landing gear doors right there. We're going to flip it over in a second, and then our intakes right there. We flip it over to the other side. Our landing gear doors, absolutely perfect, no issues on those two. But then we get to these two, and then we do have some ejector pin marks to clean up. They are fairly easy to clean up because they are on nice flat surface right there. Then we have our intakes right here. We're going to have a couple pieces that go, let me check that again. I think there's a piece that goes in front of this, so that's not really a big issue right there. And then our other landing gear doors, again, let me get where my finger is, right there. We do have a couple ejector pin marks on that, and then also with our electronics bays, we do have a couple of ejector pin marks, but again, they are very shallow and very easy to sand out. Again, our refueling probe right there, just moving around right along antenna, and then our refueling door, again, a couple of ejector pin marks on that. And then on our flap actuators, we don't have any issues with any of those. Alright, so up next we have our outer wings right here. I'm going to see if changing the light will show off anything better. Alright, so we do have some really nice rivet detail on this wing right here, as you can see, picking up on the light right there. And then we have the other side of our wings. This is the lower side right here, and then we have the underside to our fuselage. Not much detail, just a few panel lines and a couple vents right here to that, but it does match up very nicely. And then our landing gear, or not our landing gear, our boarding ladder well right here, some nice detail on the inside of that. Alright, and then we have our inner wings right here. As you can see, some very nice rivet detail on those right there. And then we flip it over to the other side right there. Again, very nice rivet detail moving right along. As you can see, this one went, there we go. And then we have our wing fold mechanisms. Very easy to deal with, and when you glue them together, there is a very solid surface for the wings. They won't really break that easily with this solid surface for the wing fold area. Alright, we are moving right along. Now we have our vertical stabilizers right here. Again, absolutely gorgeous rivet detail with our formation lights molded in right there. They might be a little bit thick for the formation lights, but they should do the job on that. And then our rudders, and then the other side of our vertical stabilizers right there. Again, very nicely done with the rivet detail and all that. It's going to look absolutely gorgeous when you have it all painted. Then we have our elevators slash horizontal stabilizers. Not much to it, just a little bit of rivet detail right there. Moving right along, and then we have the other side right there. Again, nicely done. The one downside to these are the connection area to the fuselage is very shallow, so it is a very weak connection point to the fuselage on that. These will break off easily unless you glue the whole thing to the fuselage. Alright, so up next we have another double sprue, and this is our fuel tank right here. A little bit of panel line and rivet detail to it, not much to it. And then we have all of our pylons. Again, a little bit of panel line and a little bit of rivet detail on there, but not much. And we also do have some mold release agent still on there, so gonna want to give your kit a definite bath before you start building this and painting it. As you can see, all the other pylons right there. Alright, now we have another double sprue, and this is our engine set right here. We do have the full length engines. We do have a few other parts that are going to be going onto these engines. As you can see, the fan blades for this, they do look a rather generic, or no, this is the exhaust fan right here. So all this is going to be covered up by a bunch of other pieces on that, so not really 100% worried about it. And then we have a bunch of other parts, and then we have our intake fan right here. It looks pretty good. Again, it's going to be pretty hard to see it with how far back it is, but you can see it, so definitely take your time with painting it and weathering it up so you can get those fan blades actually showing up. Then we have all the other parts right there for our engine, and then our engine exhaust. Alright, so for out of the box, these exhausts actually look very, very nice. Now, of course, the resin exhausts are going to have a lot more detail, like on the exterior right here, but on the interior, even as you can see, we do have a lot of very nice detail on the inside of these exhausts. So for injection molding on the exhaust, these are very, very nice. Definitely makes me question the need for aftermarket on these. Definitely going to need to do a side-by-side of the Aries or the Res Kit exhaust to see what the difference is when I do this kit right here. Alright, up next we have our cockpit sprue right here. We have the back wall piece right here. Then our cockpit tub. We're going to spin this around here in a second. But just going around, we have our canopy railings right there. And then we have another piece for our canopy. Then our front instrument combing or panel right there. Then the Rio instrument combing. Then a bunch of other pieces right there. We have a couple pieces that are going to be going into the cockpit as well. Then we flip it over to look at the actual cockpit. Alright, so the detail on the switch panels right there, they do look a little bit generic. Honestly speaking, those don't look, they look okay, but you can do a lot better. And especially now with Quinta Studios and Red Fox and Keelik and all those other companies coming out with 3D printed decals, definitely going to be investing in some of those for this kit just to liven up the cockpit, because cockpit for me is a big deal. We also in the cockpit do have 3 rather large ejector pin marks, or 4 rather large ejector pin marks in the cockpit tub. Now, the one that's back here isn't going to be an issue because that's going to be covered up by the pilot seat. These two will be pretty visible, and then this one up here won't be visible. So these 2 ejector pin marks are going to be the only 2 visible ones that you need to take care of while doing this build. Alright, so up next we have our control surfaces right here. We have our flaps, the bottom edge, the top edge of the flaps, and all that stuff going on right along here. Not much detail, just a couple panel lines on there, no rivets on there to go on. So everything does look very nice, and that fit is very nice with these connection points right here along with those flap actuators. So really no issues with these, and they do look very nice when they are in the down position as well. Alright, so now we have our nose section of the fuselage right here, again with our formation lights right there, and we do have some very nice panel line and rivet detail going on. Then we get to our electronics bay right here, some very nice detail on that as well. And just going right along with all of this. Then our intakes, the exterior of our intakes, again, very nice panel line and rivet detail on all of those on both sides of that, as you can see. Very nicely done. And then we have the other side of our front fuselage section right there. Again, nicely done on this. We flip it over to the other side. Alright, so our intakes, they do have a good amount of ejector pins, but they should be fairly easy to sand out if you do it prior to assembly right there, as you can see on all of those. And then the actual inside of the cockpit right here, you're not going to see any of this because it's all going to be covered up by the cockpit. Alright, now we have our landing gear and our wheel hubs right here. The wheel hubs do look very nice on that, and the landing gear also does look pretty nice. The tie down hooks are a little bit thick. They are molded to the main body, so you might want to get some aftermarket ones of those. Just to make it look a little bit better on that. And then we have all the other pieces going on. Our nose landing gear, well, the sealing for it does look very nice. We have some nice cable detail on there. Again, you're not going to be able to see much of it, but it is there. Then our landing gear doors right there. Then our wheel hubs for our main landing gear. Some more landing gear parts going right through there. And landing gear doors, we're going to flip it around here in a second to see how those look. Then our aft landing gear or main landing gear, again with the tie down right there, look a little bit thick for me. So definitely gonna need to take care of that. And then we have the sidewalls for our nose landing gear. Again, a little bit of cable detail on those right there. Alright, so flipping it over to the other side for our landing gear doors. Alright, so let me get you on camera right there. Okay, no issues with those landing gear doors or this one and this one as well. So again, all really good detail on these landing gear doors, which are your nose landing gear doors. Alright, and now we have our last sprue of the kit. We have our nose cone right here. Again, really nice shape to that. We do have this weird ejector pin on the edge right here that we're going to need to cut off. Then we have another fuel tank right here. Not much detail to it, but the shape does look pretty good on that. Then we have all the other parts. We have our another instrument combing or instrument panel for our cockpit right there. Again, pretty nicely done on the switches and all that on that part, unlike the rest of the cockpit. And then our boarding ladder right here, and a few other odds and ends, little bits. Our framing for our main landing gear well right there, that, and then our radar section right here. We can see we have a nice little waffle molding into that. So again, very nicely done. And then our tail hook, again, looks pretty nice. The actual hook area is blocked off. That doesn't look like an actual tail hook. It just looks like a little house right there. So definitely going to need to modify that for that piece, because that just does not look good on that piece. Alright, so that does it for the Trumpeter 132nd F-18F Super Hornet. Now, this kit looks very, very nice. All the exterior detail looks absolutely gorgeous. The intakes, yes, they do have some ejector pin marks, but those do look fairly simple to clean up. There are also aftermarket exhausts out there for if you want to go that route, or intakes. There are also aftermarket exhausts as well. Which brings me to my next point, the exhaust. The exhausts in this kit actually look very, very nice. It is hard for me to say that aftermarket exhausts are needed for this kit, because the ones in the kit look absolutely gorgeous straight out of the box. So there's that. We do get a lot of weapons included in this set as well. The one downside I would say is the bamboozle of the metal landing gear. Trying to see where it says that on the box. Maybe it doesn't say that on the box. But anyways, it's just a plastic core to the landing gear, so I don't know how that's going to add much more strength to the landing gear. But everything else on this kit looks absolutely amazing. I have built the E and the G version of this kit, so I do know that it goes together very well. It looks very nice. If you want to, you can go to my complete or final review playlist and see the playlist or the video of that build final review. I was doing that one prior to starting the channel, so that one is just a final review. It's not a full build video. But anyways, that's all I really have to say about this kit. It looks like it's going to be a fun time. It is a fun time to build. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope if you're on the fence about getting this kit, I hope this helped you make your decision. And if you haven't yet, don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment down below, especially if you've built this one before. And that's all. So until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. Stay frosty and happy modeling.